Right, hello. Welcome to the Progressive Hub live stream of the final session of the DNC summer meeting, they're calling it. Though don't get that confused with a seasonal meeting. It just happens to be happening in the summer. They do 2 meetings a year. This is the second one. They met yesterday to go over the committee resolutions, the resolutions committee, and they passed pretty much all of them unanimously, with the exception of the two Gaza resolutions, Resolution 3 and Resolution 18. Resolution 18 was submitted by a progressive from Florida, Allison Minnerly, and it was a good, strong, progressive approach to Gaza that would have recalibrated the Democrats to be on the right side of history. Unfortunately, before they voted on that, they voted on resolution number 3, which was a much more watered down status quo version of the Gaza bill that kept everything in line with the Biden and Kamala lines on Gaza. So they voted on that one. That one passed. By the time they got to 18, they said, well, we don't need this one because 3 already passed. So 18 failed. And then just before the session ended, Ken Martin pulled Resolution 3 entirely, withdrew it. So the Democrats will not be taking any formal Gaza position up for a vote today, which is extremely unfortunate. But he said that he would move the decision to a task force, which is a good place to send something to die, to not get anything accomplished. So we will see. Hopefully they will begin shortly. They just started their live stream. We got a massive number, 34 people watching live on YouTube. And we will have several guests joining us today. Political Director at Roots Action, Sam Rosenthal, will be here. National Director Norman Solomon, India Walton will be here. Let's listen in.
By now, many of you have heard the news that there was a shooting this morning that took place at Annunciation Church and Catholic School in South Minneapolis, no more than 10 minutes from where we are now. At this moment, we are praying for the families, the students, and the teachers at Annunciation. We are praying. What we know is that emergency responders are on the scene. And while we wait for more details about what happened this morning, we are sending our support to all the first responders, law enforcement officers, hospital and medical workers, and everybody who is supporting the response. This is the first week of school for students at Annunciation. These families woke up this morning to celebrate milestones in their children's lives. Milestones like the first week of kindergarten. We are heartbroken. This is a tragic day for our city and a tragic day for Minnesotans. On the heels of a tragic year where we already lost our dear friends, Melissa and Mark Ortman, and it's unacceptable. It's far too commonplace in our nation. It's just far too commonplace. Folks, we need your prayers, we need your faith, and we need leadership to stop this evil. We have a quorum, members, but I would like to, at this point, now recognize Bishop Leah Daughtry to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Psalm 61, 1 through 2. Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. God our Father, God our Mother, God our Creator, we, your children, for lives snatched away too soon, for families and friends left devastated, for the forces of hatred that birth such painful actions. And we ask, how long, O Lord, how long? How long will our nation allow such hatred to reign unchecked? How long, O Lord, how long must we labor under the weight of racism and sexism and homophobia, which steals our breath and robs us of our joy? How long, O Lord, how long must we witness our communities overtaken by occupying forces? How long, O Lord, how long must our nation, our neighbors labor under threat of economic peril? How long, O Lord, how long must we witness man's inhumanity to man, breeding famine and genocide around the world? How long, O Lord, how long must we grieve for broken dreams and stolen breath and threatened joy? How long, O Lord, how long? Though this be our burden, though this be our challenge, though we have more questions than answers, we look to you, O God, and to your word to us, and we hear the answer to our questions. How long? Not long. As long as we have hope and faith. How long? Not long. As long as we have breath and vision. How long? Not long. As long as we stand together. How long? Not long. Because we have committed ourselves to work, to fight, to organize, to mobilize, to protect and defend our neighbors, all of our neighbors. How long? Not long. Because we have dedicated ourselves to liberty and justice for all. How
Very
long?
interesting. She
Not long,
mentioned
because
how long we'll
truth
have to suffer through
crushed to the
genocide
earth
and
shall
famine
rise again.
after the Democrats
How
decided
long?
not
Not long,
to
because
stand
God on our
against it
side
yesterday.
is more than the whole world against us. How long? Not long, because we know that the darkest hour is just before the dawn. Bring the dawn, O God. Bring the dawn. Comfort the families. Comfort us. Heal our broken hearts. Give us strength, O God, for this day and the next. Give us strength to stand together, to work together, to move forward together, to major in the majors and minor in the minors. Be with us through every fallen tear, through every deep sigh, through every moment of confusion and bewilderment, through our
For folks
rage
just
and through
joining
our
us,
anger.
this is the beginning of the DNC General Session 2. This is where things will actually be voted on the floor of the DNC, everything that made it through committee yesterday, all the resolutions. So we'll be seeing those shortly.
Those who have more month than money, those who take the early bus, those who work the late shift, those who teach the children, who fight the fires, who tend the sick, who drive the buses. While we grieve, we work. While we cry, we organize. While we sigh, we mobilize for ourselves and for the people, for the work that must be done, for the bridges that must be built, for the children who must be saved, for the sick who must be healed, for the last who must be first. We ask for strength for the journey, clarity of thought, sharpness of vision, singleness of purpose, and the courage of our convictions, until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. Because we ask it in your name, we declare that it is so. And all of God's people say, amen.
Now we should be getting to the general session now.
I want to thank Bishop Daughtry for being called in this moment on her birthday, nonetheless, to lead us in prayer. Folks, this is a very, very tragic time for this community right now. The news that's breaking is that there are 20 victims, almost all of them children. And so at this moment, I'm going to call on Congresswoman Joyce Beatty.
Mr. Chairman, and to the members, it is with a heavy heart that I come this morning during this horrific time that unfortunately is no longer unique. Members, I'd like to present a motion to suspend. I would like to move to suspend the rules and adopt the reports of the Resolutions and Rules and Bylaws Committee en blanc.
Congresswoman Beatty has moved to accept the business of this report en blanc, which means that we would vote on all of this at once to suspend the rules so that we can adjourn this meeting rightfully so. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
I'm sorry, who? Okay, let me just say, before we go to that, has been a motion to suspend the rules and adopt the reports of the Resolutions and Rules and Bylaws Committee en blanc. This will require a 2/3 vote, and I believe it is debatable, correct?
Wow.
It is not debatable, a motion to suspend the rules, okay? So at this point, this requires a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules and adopt the reports of the Resolutions, Rules, and Bylaws Committees en bloc. As it is not a debatable motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes clearly have it. More than 2/3 have voted in the affirmative, and therefore you have suspended the rules and adopted the reports of the Resolutions and Rules and Bylaws Committee as distributed to you from the Secretary's office.
Whoa.
At this point, I would like to recognize Vice Chair Raina Walters-Morgan.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Vice Chair Walters-Morgan has made a motion to adjourn this meeting. It is seconded and is moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting at this point signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The last thing I would say before we leave here today, with heavy hearts for sure, is we will be meeting in Los Angeles, California on December 8th through the 11th, I believe. Is that correct? Sorry if someone could give me that date. 11th through the 13th. Thank you. December 11th through the 13th in Los Angeles, California for our next meeting. December 11th through the 13th. Los Angeles, California will be the next meeting of the DNC. There's lots of work that will happen between. I just want to thank you all for coming.
Whoa.
I'm extremely, extremely sorry that our meeting ended on such a tragic note. But as we leave here with heavy hearts, let's steel ourselves again in this work and why it's so important. Everything we do,
I have to make
everything we do is to make sure that things like this never happen again, especially to little children. So let's leave here today steeled in this fight, knowing what we have to do. Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.
Well, that was unexpected. I've just called Norman Solomon to say, hey, hop on this call now because they've ended the meeting. Really unprecedented, I guess. There's a mass shooting, which happens all the time now, as Ken Martin said, at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, near where the DNC meeting right now is in Minneapolis. We will stop sharing that. We will start maybe sharing the CNN page so we can see what's going on there. So there's a shooter at a Catholic school. Okay, so Ken Martin says he's getting reports of 20 killed in Minneapolis. They suspended the rules of the DNC meeting. They voted to accept all the resolutions en blanc all at the same time. That passed immediately. And then they motioned to suspend the meeting and end it. And that passed, that needed 2/3, and that passed easily. So the meeting is over now. The DNC accepted all the resolutions. Accepted all of the resolutions that had made it through committee yesterday. I'll try to get a quick update on the shooting as well. The suspect has been killed. Tim Walz has been briefed. Trump has been briefed, and there's no active threat in the community anymore. So that is good. Lots of gunfire. Awful situation. We'll get Norman on here soon to help talk about this and what this means for the DNC as well. I know it seems like we shouldn't talk about it, but a lot of things happened in the last 2 days at the DNC. We can quickly go look at some of these. So all of these resolutions passed except number 3 and number 18. So the first one, recognizing the need to bring down the cost of living and address the affordability crisis in America. Now you got to remember, with most of these, they're not proposing laws even. They're not proposing much of anything. It's a statement of what we believe in for the most part. And during the stream, they didn't do a very good job of actually showing what the therefore is in these resolutions. They're written as, whereas this thing is bad, whereas this thing is bad, whereas we need this, therefore this is what we believe. And they kept not showing that yesterday, so we missed a majority of the therefores. But these are basically statements. Number 2, resolution condemning the first 6 months of Trump's administration. Nothing. And then they got to number 3, and I'll give you a quick rundown of what happened yesterday and apparently in the days before. So initially, Allison, young woman named Allison from Florida, Allison Minnerly, submitted resolution 18 on Gaza. And this was a really strong, progressive approach to Gaza that would have ended the weapons flowing to Israel, which is what the U.S. can do to quickly end that genocide that's happening there and the famine there. She had lots of support, but obviously the establishment Democrats don't want to do anything like that because that would upset their donor base and all the foreign policy of Biden and Kamala, the failed foreign policy. So Ken Martin put in his own resolution, which immediately jumped to the front and was number 3, resolution for humanitarian aid to Gaza and an end to the Israel-Hamas war. Really what this was, a very status quo, milquetoast continuation of what Biden and Kamala wanted to do. Hey, let the kids get fed, but definitely you're allowed to keep bombing them as much as you want with U.S. weapons. So what happens was, yesterday they passed resolution number 1, no problem. They passed resolution number 2, no problem. They get to resolution number 3 and it passes, no problem. There's a couple of people who say things, but there's no dissent on it at all. There's no dissent on anything else until we get to Resolution 18. And Resolution 18 was the progressive resolution that would have ended the flow of weapons to Israel. And there was a lot of debate on this and a lot of pushback on this. And one of the core reasons that ultimately it did not pass on a voice vote, so we'll never know who voted yes or no, was because people kept referencing, well, we already passed Resolution 3. And we don't need to pass two resolutions on Gaza. We've already clearly stated what our thoughts are on it, so we don't need two of these. It would just be confusing. So Resolution 18 loses because they already have Resolution 3. There's only 19 resolutions, so they do one more resolution on ICE, passes, no problem. And then right before the meeting is adjourned, Ken Martin pulls Resolution 3. He withdraws it and says, we're going to actually take this to a task force instead. We're going to get a task force together to look into this and see what we need to do. So therefore, today, even, essentially, if the meeting would have went on as planned, there would have been no comment, no opinion, no stance on the war on Gaza whatsoever from the Democrats nearly 2 years into the war, genocide, famine. There was another strategy today led by progressives in the DNC where they were going to try to bring this same resolution to the full floor for everybody to vote. That was the plan. But the mass shooting happened. All the rules were suspended. The resolutions were accepted. And there was no vote. There was no debate. There was no conversation about Gaza. So the Democrats will officially have no stance on Gaza. The folks who wanted to try to bring it to the floor to actually force a vote on it, to actually hear what the Democrats say, to get the DNC members to vote, they won't have that opportunity now. I don't know if they had the numbers to do that or not. We'll never know. But we do know that they will not have the chance to vote on it or talk about it again until December, what did he say? December 11th through 13th in Los Angeles, which I'm glad they're going to LA. I'm glad they're going to a big city. Perhaps some protesters should show up. Perhaps some people should show up to let them know what they think about the party really not doing anything, especially on Gaza. So extremely disappointing. There's some okay things here. There's some okay resolutions that were passed. Largely, they're toothless, though. They don't mean a whole lot. They don't do a whole lot. There's a resolution condemning anti-Semitism. Fine. There's also a resolution condemning Islamophobia. Fine. They don't do much. Honoring veterans, Social Security, the resolution, honoring Social Security, they don't even talk about raising the cap on Social Security. It's a lot of hot air without much there. So I'm going to step away, take a quick break for 5 minutes, come back. When I come back, hopefully Norman Solomon will be joining us. So until then, I will be right back. Okay, we're back. I'm going to throw on a replay of the DNC meeting from what at least we saw today, so we can talk a little bit about it. Let's see. Yeah.
Resistance is voting and voting Democratic. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Next up,
Not a great start. Resistance is voting, and voting is Democratic. All right.
First of all, let me just say good morning and thank you to our chair. It has certainly been an honor and a pleasure. And as we have heard throughout our time today and before, that it is about us being together. And it's been a great pleasure. Let me echo what Stuart said. And it was important to know that every one of our DNC elected and appointed members stood with you there. And I think that was very important. It's also important for me to share that we need to embrace everyone, all the groups, and to the young Dems specifically, and the Dems abroad who often don't get as much notice. Let me say thank you. I was honored to be able to have done a fireside chat with Democrats abroad and to been able to.
You got to point out that the reason young Democrats and Democrats abroad don't get listened to much is because they're out of step with the mainstream Democratic Party. They're more progressive. They want Medicare for all, and they want to end the wars. And the Dems don't. That's why you don't hear from them much.
We know the energy in what we heard in probably one of the most amazing opening sessions from all of us, from the caucuses, from the elections, from the reports. And we need to let America know that Democrats are fighting for the everyday working people, that Democrats are going to turn this country around because it is us that protects our democracy and stands for justice and equity.
Biden was just president. Biden was just president.
Thank you.
But
thank
just
you,
president.
Congresswoman Beatty. Next up is Vice Chair Artie Blanco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. You know, I want to congratulate everyone that has joined this committee. I want to also congratulate the chair who has had.
So when we covered the executive committee meeting, 5-6 months ago, whatever the last one was, in Little Rock, Arkansas, I was shocked to see that almost the entire meeting was DNC members patting each other on the back, telling each other how great they are, how hard they're working, how good a job they're doing. And that's what today, the first session today, mostly has been or was.
Hear a new story, which I just heard this morning, that a coworker of mine in Columbia, in DC, in her neighborhood at 5 a.m, these these people that are just armed to the hilt, that are not even experienced law enforcement, have maybe had a week on the job because they are nothing but bounty hunters, looking for people working, doing the job in the neighborhoods of building homes, reinventing homes of first-time home buyers or families that are trying to do better in their homes. Just themselves going and showing up to work at 5 a.m. to provide for their families and for their communities. We pay taxes. We contribute to this country. And every day there is a new story. Actually, there's more than one story. Probably every minute there's a new story of someone being taken down. This is the beginning. This is where we're at. They're continuing to come after labor unions, arresting labor union leaders as well. This morning, there was a new report about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is now in the U.S., and they are trying to fight to get his amnesty process going again. They are just picking people up that are trying to do better in our community. And that's why we can't give up. And I know it feels overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me at times. And I feel that the best thing every day, what I do is share new stories. We need to continue to share what is popping up in social media and having the conversations and showing up for people when we see it.
You know, there's a lot of truth here, but there's also a lot of misdirections here. with the Democrats' commitment to labor, let's not forget that Biden broke the rail strike, right? So sure, Democrats are much better for labor than Republicans. There's the back patting, the self-congratulatory nature of this is a little beyond the pale. It's kind of ridiculous. We live in some sort of unreality. The upside down.
And I appreciate everyone taking our emails and calls and all of that. But I'm very honored to now be in this position and very grateful for the support that came out of this body, and particularly from my elders. I want to acknowledge Belle Leong Hong, who has been an amazing leader of our AAPI caucus. And could not have done this without her. And also Miss Virgie Rollins, who really came in to also support me so much. So thank you to you both and to everyone here. It's been really important to me to get right into the work and jump into it, and particularly make connections with our young folks. It was important to me that they didn't feel like they were losing representation. And so one of the very first trips that I did in July was to the Young Democrats of America convention in Philadelphia, and made wonderful connections there, and was able to demonstrate that we as the DNC were going to continue to show up and build those relationships. I also traveled to Memphis to speak at the Teamsters National Black Caucus dinner down in Memphis, and really am working to try to make sure that we make these connections with labor as well. And then have also just recently went to the Oregon Dems and walked with the Hawaii Dems in their parade for the 4th of July, and have been making the rounds and getting out there.
I've got to point out again, these points about young people and reaching out to young people. Here's a research. Here's from the Brookings Institute. Only 27% of young people in the U.S. are supportive of Netanyahu, and 84% favor an immediate ceasefire. More than 7 in 10 believe that there is a hunger crisis in Gaza. There is strong support for more humanitarian aid to Palestinians. 45% of voters believe that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians, and only 31% disagree. It's
truly putting words into action is Vice Chair Malcolm Kenyatta, who's probably traveled more than any other officer around this country, lifting up our party and our values. Vice Chair Kenyatta.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank all.
They're so obsessed with the problem is we're not saying the right words, and the real problem is they're not listening at all.
But I think the tragedy this morning that we're all just sitting with right now and processing reminds us of the fact that everything that we're doing, what my fellow officers just mentioned.
Norman Solomon joining us now, National Director of Roots Action.
Who's on the side of working people in this
How you doing this morning, Norman?
Well, hanging in here, trying to keep up with the news, and thanks for this anchoring of these live stream sessions, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. I wasn't sure what to do. Can I fill you in again on what happened?
Please, I'm sure a lot of people just joining us would like to hear as well.
Yeah, so first session we weren't live streaming during because it was mostly patting each other on the back and congratulations. It ended with a little firework. I sent you the video of former Governor Walter, I believe, asking why are there no working group? Why are we not doing anything in 6 years at these executive committee meetings? Why do we do nothing? He's gavelled away. The meeting ends. Interesting. Okay, let's see if this gets revisited. Second session starts. Unfortunately, sadly, expectedly to some degree, there was a terrible mass shooting in Minneapolis this morning at a Catholic school there. At least 20 injured, maybe a couple dead, but mostly injured. It's a gruesome, horrible scene. So, because of that, and in lieu of doing their regular meeting, the DNC, with a 2/3 vote, decided to suspend the rules. And once the rules were suspended, they decided to accept all the resolutions that made it to the floor. I believe they said en blanche was the word they used, meaning all at the same time, all approved, were good. That passed. And then it was proposed to suspend the meeting, which also passed very quickly.
Yeah, and
So-
Ryan, I think we should let people know that what they're seeing on the screen is a replay from this morning. And
Yep.
so we're, which apparently not much of substance happened, but I appreciate your summary. And should we dip back into what is playing now just for a minute so we can get a sense? This is, as I see on the screen, a vice chair of the DNC, Malcolm Kenyatta, who is a state representative in Pennsylvania, who has
That's
just been speaking. And now apparently we can hear again from
Next
the
up
chair.
is the ASDC President and Vice Chair, Jane Klibb.
Thank you,
Jane
Chair
Club
Martin.
is quite powerful.
The ASDC has been very busy over the past couple of months. We have been to 56 out of the 57 state parties doing our SWOT analysis in conjunction with Chair Martin's Office of Innovation. We've conducted over 1,500 interviews with local folks in the states, figuring out what folks on the ground think their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are of their state party. They will then be given a report written by the ASDC and DNC, and then they'll be given a strategic planning grant to write a 4-year, not 1 year, not 6 months, but a 4-year strategic plan. Those will all be given, of course, to the DNC as they conduct their 10-year strategic planning process. We have an exciting announcement to do later today at the ASDC meeting, so I won't do it here, but it's in conjunction with Act Blue and a good investment into our state party infrastructure. And then we're just, continuing to innovate at state parties. We're doing projects like listening posts and making sure that our state parties are doing programming like partisan voter registration, voter guides, precinct and block captains. So we are doing the work to elect Democrats at the state and local level. And we have these victories that we can brag about because of strong state parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Our next up is our National Finance Chair, Chris Corge.
And as a member of the seasoned community, I am very proud to give this report.
Yeah, so that's what most of the meeting has been. A lot of just quick overview saying how great of a job they're doing, how great of a job they're about to do, doing SWOT, and lots of just we're looking into things, we're trying to improve.
Yeah,
These are processes that should have been going on for 30 years,
Well, Ryan, a couple of footnotes here. We just heard from Jane Cleave. She's not only a vice chair of the DNC, she also is now the head of the entire what's called ASDC. It is the association of all the Democratic state party chairs. And so she's really ascended to really the second most powerful person in the entire national DNC type apparatus, leaving Congress aside. And she's a very close ally with Ken Martin. Right. We're hearing now from Chris Corge, or just did hear the beginning of, he's been the finance chair for a long time. And there have been a lot of concerns raised about his financial conflicts of interest, wheeler dealing in terms of real estate. And he certainly is in the, you would say, more corporate wing, which dominates the DNC in general. When we look at what's happened in the last couple of days with the DNC meeting, I think one of the patterns which has continued to assert itself is one that I'm familiar with, having been on the State Democratic Party Central Committee here in California for 10 years, is that basically whatever the chair says goes. Maybe, as was last the case with the DNC, there's a contested chair election. Maybe there isn't, in terms of a real battle, competition to be elected. But once the chair is elected, that is pretty much a de facto semi-dictatorship of the chairitariat. And the chair gets to appoint the major powerful committee chairs and members and so forth. Ken Martin, to his credit, somewhat has mitigated that, having more of an elective process within the DNC. But we saw, in terms of the deep concerns that a few delegates brought to the fore about U.S. funding of war in Gaza, warfare on Gaza, the arming of Israel for what many human rights organizations have categorically called genocide, that deference to the chair has just been extremely powerful. And whatever Chair Ken Martin wanted to do and made clear he wanted to have happen is what happened. And so I think this is a challenge, to put it mildly, for people who want a lowercase d Democratic Party to function within the DNC, which, after all, the Democratic National Committee is the legal entity that runs the Democratic Party.
Right. And you've had a lot of talk today, too, about reaching out to young people. I've said on stream a couple times today, there's all this better messaging to young people, reaching out to them more, talking to them more, meeting them where they are, all of this stuff. No mention of listening to them, no mention of what they actually think about Gaza, no mention of anything like that, money and politics. It's all what we have to do to get them without, like you're saying, that lower D democracy of just listening to the people and like listening to the voters, which they have not done a great job about. They also mentioned, I don't know if they are now or the previous speaker did, they've brought in $70 million so far this year, which they say is a record. And yet we know that they have very, very little cash on hand in a wide gap with the Republicans. So it's, talking out of two sides of your mouth a little bit with that.
Well, I think a major problem, and you just alluded to it and touched on it, is that there's a lot of attention to the packaging, the PR, and this is classic when there's a problem with popularity of a product or a party, then the packaging is blamed. We have to message better, but what is inside the package? What is the content? And the question of appealing to young people is just a flagrant classic and very really ongoing example, and a crucial one, because the fall off, for instance, of the Democratic youth vote between 2020 for president and last year was huge, and the drop was really pivotal. And what we're seeing now is a rhetoric coming from the top of the DNC, however heartfelt it might be, that we have to reach out more and get the youth vote. And yet what the DNC has just done at this meeting is to tell young people, even more than the overwhelming majority of registered Democrats in this country, who want to have an end to the U.S. shipping of weapons to Israel as the genocide continues. What the DNC has done is open the door a crack to dialogue, but refuse to acknowledge the emergency that this killing is going on day after day, refusing to acknowledge that the Democratic Party base, as Gallup and other polls make crystal clear, does not want the U.S. to continue to send weapons to Israel, does not want the Democratic Party on the whole, with some exceptions, to aid and abet and refuse to challenge that shipping of weapons. So we've got going on right now, the Democratic National Committee refusing to respond to the deeply felt outrage and opposition that particularly young Democrats, but Democrats as a whole, clearly from polling, that they feel about this continued shipping of weaponry to the Israeli military, the so-called Israeli Defense Force. And so this is a basic contradiction where, as the saying goes, wanting to go to heaven but not wanting to die or take the risks, where we have a leadership at the DNC that's just not willing to confront the realities that their own membership of the party, their own registered base of the party, wants them to do what they're refusing to do, which is to call for an arms embargo on Israel.
Right. I mean, right now it's a party that's very much interested in shaping their voters and not letting the voters shape the party at all. In terms of here's one thing they're doing. I'm going to switch tabs that I'm sharing real quick. Our political director, Sam, sent us this morning. A dark money group is secretly funding high-profile Democratic influencers. They're paying people online $8,000 a month to just push the party line, not tell anybody about it. So this is their idea of connecting with young voters, and it's not going to work. I mean, people see through that all day. I don't know why they won't just listen.
Well, I think listening is hazardous, especially if what is heard is listened to and adhered to. Just there are two levels I think we could discuss this on. It's a moral level, and then it's a electoral strategic level. At the moral level, we have Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, two major Israeli human rights organizations, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel, all four of them categorically saying that Israel is engaged in genocide. And as Congressman Ro Khanna tweeted a few hours ago, this is not complicated. The U.S. should not be providing weapons to countries that are engaged in huge human rights abuses and killing civilians. And so the polling is there, as well as the moral level at which it should be clear that the Democratic Party should take a clear position. We want a cutoff of weapons to Israel as this genocide continues. And so both at a moral and a electoral level, we see a tone-deaf leadership. And I think it's fascinating that in the last vote taken on the Senate floor with a position, a resolution, a measure presented by Senator Bernie Sanders to cut off a lot of those weapons, for the first time, a majority of Senate Democrats voted in favor of a
27 of them.
Yeah. And so the House Democrats, it's a much smaller percentage, maybe 15, have signed on to the Rodriguez bill, Delia Rodriguez bill, that is similar. So why, if so many now, better late than never, members of Congress who are Democrats are calling for a cutoff of weaponry, why was the resolution put forward by DNC Chair Ken Martin so tone deaf? It's like completely fingers in ears, basically recycling the rhetoric that came from the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris campaigns last year, just talking about a two-state solution and not dealing with, completely eliding and avoiding the reality of these weapons from the US are enabling, literally making possible, the mass killing and genocide. So this is a chronic problem, and you have to give, I think, enormous credit to the organizers, to Allison Minnerly and others. She's one of the few delegates, the DNC, who has been willing and able to push this moral and electoral issue to the forefront in the last 48 hours. She is a member of the DNC from Florida. She's been very articulate and clear. I'd recommend people who want to hear an interview with her. She was on Democracy Now! This morning, and that's online at democracynow.org. And we have, I think, people around the country now who are activists, who are concerned, have an opportunity to redouble efforts to organize effectively on this crucial matter of, in real time, genocide taking place, and in real time, the US government continuing to enable it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've got to react in some way. I got a couple comments here I wrote down. I think a big difference between the House and Senate on this is their terms. I think these House members are more afraid. In a 2-year term, that means they're constantly running for Congress at all times. The door is wide open for AIPAC to go after them today if they say something, right? Whereas a senator might have 4 or 5 years before their next election. AIPAC's not going to waste millions of dollars going after somebody that has 5 years until their next election. So it's a little bit safer there. The House members are all much more scared, is my kind of view of it from that. But I think the party in general, by not taking a position, by kind of staying back the whole time, they're maintaining a level of plausible deniability about all of this. They can say we were never on the side of genocide. We were just trying to figure out what the hell was going on. That's Trump's line, though, until we figure out what the hell's going on, right? So I think that's what the Democrats are doing, launching a task force 2 years into a genocide to look into, like, what should the party do about this? It appears, I can't read their minds, I don't know what they're thinking. It appears a lot like you can maintain plausible deniability as long as possible until someone else solves this and you don't have to.
Yeah, well, it is stunning. One of the aspects, for instance, I wrote a piece that was on Common Dreams on Monday and Salon yesterday about this phenomenon of the DNC and the leadership of the Democratic Party basically, as you say, pretends that there's all the time to keep studying this, pretends that we can figure this out down the line. And I interviewed one vice chair who I quote by name in the piece, Shasti Conrad, who told me that, well, I'm not sure how I would vote. I'll wait and see, she said, until the Resolutions Committee votes. And knowing full well that the Resolutions Committee was not going to adopt a measure that was for an arms cutoff to Israel, that the chair of the DNC clearly opposed. And so it's a way of continuing to kick cans down the road. And I do remember, I'm old enough, I was in high school during the Vietnam War, very similar phenomenon, 1966, 67, when members of the House and Senate in the Democratic Party, then in the majority, just delayed challenging the war in Vietnam, saying, well, we have to fight the communists and this is too early to turn against the war. They would say that privately. And year after year went by and more people got killed. And it's this conformity that in the light of history is repudiated, but in real time for so many people, it's the way of doing political business.
Right. And I think, unfortunately, we won't even know how Shasti voted, right?
Well, I mean, it is an accountability issue that Allison Minnerly and other of the insurgents on this issue on the DNC have been raising, because even in the Resolutions Committee, there was a voice vote.
Yeah.
And it was overwhelmingly to go along with the chair and quash this arms embargo resolution. So it wasn't recorded in the committee. And as you say, Ryan, then it made sure that there was no way then it could get to the floor where there could be a vote, where there would have had to been a battle over recording those votes. So it's sort of anonymity hiding within the herd. And yet we know the reality is that the vast majority of members of the DNC were totally in line with the chair, who was totally in line with refusing to challenge the weapons going to Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. And they didn't want to address it. And I can imagine, they didn't want Allison Minnerly or anyone else to force a floor vote today. And I think it brings up a really uncomfortable conversation. There was a shooting today and they suspended the whole meeting. There was no chance that Gaza vote happened. And I think that, however awful and tragic, it's a shooting, kids die. It's awful. It makes sense to suspend the meeting. It also happens to be really convenient for the Democrats. Convenient insofar as they don't have to address the Gaza thing. They don't have to address the situation where children are getting killed because our children got killed.
That is a tremendous irony. That
it's hard. How do you even talk about that? Because there are literally kids dead right now. But there's literally kids dead right now in Palestine too.
Right.
And they chose not to talk about it. It's just.
Well, there are in U.S. mass politics and mass media people whose lives really matter and people whose lives really don't, which is just a corrosive cultural attitude, often unconscious, that is so pernicious, so damaging to humanity. And this has been a frequent motif in US politics and mass media, from Vietnam War to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, where American lives are held as sacred, which they should be.
Yeah.
And those at the end of Pentagon firepower, their lives are discounted as
War is messy.
really unimportant.
War is messy, Norman. People die in wars.
Yeah.
Bad things happen in wars. That's how you talk about dead brown babies in the Middle East. But here we suspend life totally, and I get that. Maybe we should do that for every time kids are getting killed.
Yeah, I mean, it is a question. When a hospital is bombed in Gaza, no reference to it whatsoever at the DNC meeting, because it's just on automatic pilot.
Well, I think we can reference 2 years ago when the first hospital was bombed. Israel denied, never happened. Oh, it was an accident. Oh, then it was, actually Hamas had tunnel. Since then, they've bombed every hospital in Gaza. Only the first time it was a news story. And that's
one of the really sad things too is that, of course, the Trump regime is horrific. Its policies in the Middle East are horrific. Its domestic repression has become more and more fascistic. So how do we defeat the Trump fascistic party? Do we do it with integrity that is also politically savvy? It's not savvy politically to further alienate voters that we could have and are losing, especially young voters who are overwhelmingly opposed to US weapons shipments to Israel. And so how is that smart? Just at that level, which we shouldn't, but even if we set aside the profound moral issues of this genocide, how is it smart for the leadership of the Democratic National Committee to ignore the polling from The Economist, YouGov, Gallup? Every reputable pollster who has looked at this knows and has shown to us that the general public is in the United States now mostly opposed to the US shipping arms to Israel. And it's a humongous gap among Democrats. 8% of Democrats in this country are in favor of what Israel is doing in Gaza. 8%. 65%, according to the YouGov poll very recently, 65% of Democrats in this country believe that Israel is engaged in genocide. And we're seeing on the screen right now, chair of the party pretending that those people don't exist, that 65% doesn't matter. And I think that's what was one of the aspects that was so disturbing about the chair's resolution, known as resolution number 3, that was pushed through yesterday through the resolutions committee. It completely pretended that reality didn't exist. The genocide didn't exist. The 65% of Democrats didn't exist. And then for another wrinkle, after pushing that resolution through as a way to say, look, we got it done. We don't need the arms embargo resolution to be really taken seriously. We just need to overwhelmingly vote it down, which is what happened because it's what the chair wanted. Then the chair turns around just minutes later and says, oh, let's rescind resolution number 3. So it was clearly a tool just to tamp down on open discussion, try to make sure that there wouldn't be more votes for the arms embargo resolution. So it's a lot of maneuvering. It's a lot of procedural manipulation. And
do you think that was a planned? Do you think that was a planned, premeditated strategy? Was to get everyone to take down 18 because you already passed 3? His resolution came after Allison Minnerly's, and so he cut her in line to do that. I find this final little interaction so interesting.
Virtual candidate camp. It was a fantastic
We'll have to look
investment
real
in
quick.
local infrastructure training.
At our December meeting.
Mr. Haynes, and certainly an investment in our party. I just wanted to thank the chair and the DNC training department for that work.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And with that, again, we'll have more time at our December meeting.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if you just indulge me for 1 second.
Governor Walters, we were late. I'm sorry.
Six years in, and we continue to not be provided an opportunity to have any kind of working discussions in this executive.
We will have, I mentioned a moment ago, Governor Walters,
know.
we will have conversations on that, and I'm happy to talk to you in a moment, okay? With that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Take care.
Well, let me give a little commentary here as the gavel has come down. By the way, we're watching, for those who are tuned in here, we watched a replay from this morning of the DNC Executive Committee, which has about 50 members, which is about 1/10 of the entire DNC. And the executive committee met in Little Rock, Arkansas, a couple of months ago. It was their first meeting in 5 months. Can you imagine, with the Trump emergency, all that going on? The executive committee, according to the bylaws of the DNC, is in charge of the entire DNC, has the legal responsibility for the DNC between the full DNC meetings. And at Roots Action, we had a petition drive in combination with Progressive Democrats of America for there to be an emergency meeting of the DNC, given what was happening, has been happening in the United States. We thought that having 2 DNC full meetings a year was simply inadequate. Well, that fell on deaf ears. So with the full DNC meeting only twice a full year, every 6 months, then it fell to the executive committee to pick up the slack and deal with this reality. And so it was stunning to me that between December last year and May of this year, there had been no executive committee meetings. And at Roots Action, we raised this issue and we wrote about it, we spoke about it. Again, we couldn't get the executive committee to meet more than once every 5 months. And when the executive committee did meet in Little Rock a couple of months ago, it scheduled its meeting for only 3 hours. Can you imagine people flying in for a 3-hour meeting? But it only met for an hour and a half, while the Trump emergency, the fascistic hammers coming down around the country, the body responsible for the DNC could meet for only 90 minutes. And that's a backdrop for what we just saw.
Well, and keep in mind, too, the 90 minutes they met for was purely patting each other on the back and telling each other, congratulations on such a good job.
Correct. So it was insult to injury to insult to injury, salt in the wounds that should not have existed in the first place. And what we saw a few minutes ago, recorded earlier today, was a brief session of the DNC Executive Committee, which is just folded in sort of pro forma to the full DNC meeting. And at the end, as we saw, the former governor of Arkansas was raising a question. Why does the Executive Committee basically do nothing? And as we saw, he was gavelled down. So this is sort of emblematic. And, we've been doing a lot of critique here, but I do want to say that activism is the antidote to these problems. And like other groups, Roots Action is determined to challenge these status quo realities that are anti-democratic, lowercase d, and result in policies and perpetuation of policies like we're seeing the arming of genocide that continues to go on in Gaza. So these are structural issues. They have to do with political power. And the way to overcome these problems, if we're serious about we shall overcome in the present day, is to organize, to support progressive groups. And certainly at rootsaction.org, we invite people to sign up for our email alerts. You go to rootsaction.org, it takes you about 30 seconds. And we're in solidarity with other organizations that are working at the grassroots for this vital kind of change that is really overdue.
Yeah, Absolutely. I think it's interesting too, mentioning Trump and everything that's going on there, with how terrible he's been. I think it's important to keep in mind the connection between what's happening in Gaza. Oh, is my screen messing up? Weird. What's happening in Gaza and what's happening in DC. I mean, I think there are connections here. We're spending billions of dollars. We're giving billions of dollars away to Israel, who trains our troops. We're putting troops in our own streets to fight crime that's largely a result of these communities not having enough money for their schools or their awful prison systems where they definitely don't help people, and they imprison people for petty crimes and destroy families. So we're investing all this money abroad, which is largely a result of Trump style policies of not investing here at home. So
yeah, militarism is such a through line here. There's so many layers, as you say now, the troops being sent into U.S. cities, and also the reality that what the Pentagon calls its 1033 program for many years has been providing U.S. Defense Department, that's the name of it, Defense Department weapons to police forces around the country. And if the police forces don't use them, these military procedures, these military weapons, really,
toys,
then they're given back. They're given back. You have to use them or lose them. So police forces around the country have been provided with virtual tanks and so forth, and they're told you should use this material or you'll have to give it back to the Pentagon. That's just one layer. And when the George Floyd protests were happening,
that's right.
The people around the country were facing off in the streets against local police forces wielding Pentagon weapons.
Untrained people who take 6 weeks courses and then are handed a gun driving tanks. I remember I lived downtown Fort Wayne at the time, and downtown Fort Wayne blew up with protests after George Floyd. We were on CNN. It was wild. And the cops just whipping through the streets in these military vehicles and pointing guns at people and scream. They were chomping at the bit to use all these new toys. And it makes a lot of sense. As soon as you have an excuse to use the toy, you use it, because otherwise it gets taken away. If it's the classic, if all you got is a hammer, everything looks like nails. And so you're just waiting for something to look like a nail. George Floyd protests, and boom, we have militarized vehicles in the street. It's awful.
It's really symptomatic, and we're looking to, and there are some Democrats in Congress who will raise these issues. The majority will not. The Democratic National Committee should be raising these issues. Instead, it's like complete silence about what Martin Luther King Jr. called the madness of militarism. You can go through this in so many respects. We've been talking about militarization of the police. Yes, Trump is notching it to a higher level, but this has been going on for decades. And the reality is that it is theft from, to quote not a leftist, Dwight Eisenhower, saying in his Cross of Iron speech, it's theft from the children of the world. This spending on the military, now $1 trillion with a T dollars a year, just going to the Pentagon, which doesn't include all of the nuclear weapons spending. And as Dr. King put it, this is a demonic, destructive suction tube of military spending that takes healthcare, education, housing away from people in this country, let alone elsewhere in the world. These are chronic problems, and many people at the grassroots are acutely aware of the problems and the solutions. I think that's why the Bernie Sanders campaigns gained so much traction. Ultimately, as brilliant a communicator as he is, it wasn't about Bernie Sanders. It was about people's growing awareness. And I think and their willingness to organize. So as we have not had an exactly optimistic discussion here, I think what is optimistic is that people are organizing, and that's always the solution.
Right. And, me and Sam were even talking, and perhaps there needs to be some organizing around the DNC, not organizing DNC members, but organizing people into the DNC, so something going on there, because it's clearly not representative of voters nor the party. And it's certainly not representative of the left or progressives or really anyone who decides that they're not a MAGA Republican. And so until they look internally, until they change how they operate, it's not going to change unless we change the people, right?
Yeah, there's that saying, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. And unfortunately, I think when it comes to the vast majority of the DNC, as we've seen in the voting the last couple of days, you can't even say their fingers are to the wind if we mean the wind from the grassroots.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, it's in the wind of which Ken Martin just blowing in a direction, and they're like, yes, that's the wind we feel.
Yeah, it's the storms coming from the elites.
Yeah.
And that's what has determined the behavior of the vast majority of the DNC voters. I mean, really, where did they come from? They work their way up through the ranks. I mean, every once in a while, someone like Allison Minerly slips through and gets inside that tent that's supposed to be, according to, or at least in practice, in the priorities of the chair, it's supposed to be a sealed off tent. And genuine progressive activists aren't supposed to get through, or if they get through, they are encouraged and often intimidated to basically go along to get along. Well, Allison Minerly, she did not go along to get along. That's why we've had progress in the last couple of days.
Do you think David Hogg misstepped by directly challenging the Dems? Do you think he would been better served to stay in the DNC and try to work internally?
Well, I think that the problem with, for what it's worth, my outlook is that the problem with David Hogg was that he threw down a gauntlet about, as a DNC officer, intervening in the primaries. And I think in that way, Ken Martin was correct.
Right.
That as we've had this history during Donna Brazil and other basically corrupted leadership of the DNC, they do try to manipulate and intervene in Democratic Party primaries, and they shouldn't be doing that. If they're DNC officers, they're supposed to be neutral. And we have this bad history of the DNC officers operating in the opposite way. So I think it was the wrong gauntlet to throw down because we don't want corporate Democrats who are vice chairs using that position to leverage raising money to intervene in primaries with millions of dollars, as AIPAC, for instance, has been doing. On the other hand, I do think David Hogg was quite correct. It's a very hidebound pseudo leadership of the DNC. It needs to be shooken up, and there is a need for primaries, for primarying candidates. I mean, we would not have Ayanna Pressley in Congress if there wasn't for a primary challenge. We wouldn't have Ro Khanna, we wouldn't have AOC. That's a crucial way to shake up a party that needs to be shooken up. So I think it was, unfortunately, a missed opportunity. I think in the last few days, it would have been great if David Hogg was still a vice chair. And I have to say that it's been tremendously disappointing to me that none of the 5 vice chairs have stood up and spoken out at all on this Gaza resolutions matter in the last 48 hours. On the contrary, again, they went along to get along with the chair. They just
What is that? What is the why do they see unity as the single most important tool at their disposal? I've never understood that.
It's a conformity incentive. And I think people watching and listening probably can reflect on organizations they've been in, especially large corporate ones, where seeming to be independent minded can get you in trouble. It won't get you the advancement feeling of your career is going to rise. You might forget a glass ceiling. You might hit a brick ceiling in your career advancement if you irritate the boss or the boards of directors or whoever. So I think there's sort of this chronic problem of, I don't want to rock the boat or I'll get thrown out of the boat.
Right, but what's the point of being on the boat if you don't know where it's going,
Well, it
right?
depends on the motivation. I mean, I
Right.
think people,
Power. I think there's a careerist problem,
yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. There's a progressive attitude that we're in politics to make social change for the better. But my own experiences in the Central Committee of the State Democratic Party was that there are people involved directly, including on the State Central Committee, who have that passion. They're driven by social change. But for, I would say, the vast majority of the people on the State Central Committee of the party, it was a secondary matter. The primary matter was to rise in the ranks, and they believed in something generic called the Democratic Party. It's like I am a supporter of the Boston Red Sox, not the LA Dodgers. It becomes a very sort of, I'm on this team and I'm going to play by the rules laid down by the manager.
Yeah, right. We just gotta all wear the same hat, and then it'd look like a sports team. Oh wait, the Republicans already did that.
Yeah.
Well, anything else before we hop off? Any closing thoughts? We've been talking for a while now.
There are a lot of reasons for people to be discouraged or feel discouraged, and I would never argue with how people feel. I do, though, want to underscore that being passive is the worst response, and that a very common experience is that when people work with others to create social change, whether it's inside a Democratic Party or outside of the Democratic Party, that's really crucial. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And a misconception that is really propagated by the vast majority of politicians, explicitly or not, is that social movements are a subset of election campaigns for candidates. And it really should be exactly the opposite. Every great change that we can be proud of in this country, for instance, Social Security, Medicare, gay rights, women's rights, civil rights, all of those changes came from the grassroots. And the people in elective office were swept away, whether reluctantly or occasionally eagerly, by the strength and growth of those social movements. So we have a lot of opportunities here.
Yeah. I've been full-time organizing now for over 5 years now, and we just got to keep doing it. It's worth it. You make contact, you reach out, you heard it from some DNC members who are pretty progressive, and you hear it from Congress people. The calls matter, the emails matter, seeing those numbers rise where people are mad, that stuff really, really matters. AOC famously said it a year or two ago where she was on a live stream talking about that's what she hears about in the halls of Washington is congressmen being annoyed that they got 10,000 emails about something, but now it's in their face and they can't ignore it. So we have to keep doing the online activism like that, but also in-person activism. We got to get people out in the streets, people holding up signs. You got to be visible. You got to be loud. Ken Martin announced the next DNC meeting, December 11th through 13th in Los Angeles. I think that's a good opportunity to have people on the street making noise about what they would rather see the DNC doing, especially in the lead up to an election. I mean, that'll be 2020. That'll be before the 2026 midterms. And then by that time, we're going to have presidentials announcing probably, right?
Yeah, and something we could add, Ryan, I think, is that often overlooked routinely is that there are congressional district offices around the country. And unless you live in a rural area, there's a congressional office near you.
Yep.
Your representative in the U.S. House of Representatives, that's an opportunity. Those are locations where you can ask for meetings, where if you don't get a meeting you want or you don't get a response at the meeting that you want, there are pickets that could be done. There are demonstrations. Whether it's an informational picket or whatever. Members of Congress would freak out if their district offices are picketed by progressives who want an end to the militarization of this society, an end to the weapons to Israel, all agenda items that are desperately needed for fulfillment.
Right.
There are at least 1,000 district offices for Congress members around the country. And that's one of the ways in which we have a tangible effect available if we avail ourselves of it. And I do want to add before we go, this is a live stream, has been coverage provided by Progressive Hub, which is a project of Roots Action and the Roots Action Education Fund. And like a lot of other groups, Roots Action is engaged in working with others to create the kind of social change that is desperately needed. And if you're not getting email alerts from Roots Action, I'd encourage you to go to rootsaction.org, and at the top, you can simply enter your email address and we'll be in touch.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much. I just posted in the chat on Facebook and on YouTube a link to progressivehub.net as well, which is where we are hosting this from. We provide daily news stories with actions connected to them that you can take right then and there while you read the article. No more just getting mad and storming off. Get mad and do something about it right then and there. And lastly, it only takes 5 or 10 people at the vast majority of congressional offices. 5 or 10 people can picket around a congressional office. If you call your local TV stations, they will show up. It is important. They will show up. I mean, unless you're in the middle of Brooklyn and it's like, that's not a big enough story for us. The vast majority of places in Fort Wayne, we got 350,000 people. We did a couple years ago, we picketed outside of Jim Banks' office, 10 of us, and we had 3 news stations show up. It's not that hard. Send an email, organize a couple people, print a couple signs, hand draw them, show up, and you can make a difference. You can inspire a lot more people than just show up physically. The people who see your message will agree with you. They will be inspired. They will do something. It matters. So keep at it. And with that, thank you so much for joining me, Norman. Weird day.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks to the whole crew at Roots Action and Progressive Hub.
Yeah, prayers out, thoughts out as much as we can with the shooting victims in Minneapolis. I assume our country will continue to do nothing about it. And hopefully we can stop killing kids here and abroad. And that's something we can all hope for.
Yeah.
Right. Well, with that, have a good rest of your day.